You probably imagine World War II as a chronicle of tank battles and endless trenches. But what if I told you it's the biggest set in history? While millions fought on the front lines, in deep mines and secret laboratories, a world was being built that was never meant to see the light of day. Today we'll delve into those very folders marked top secret, which were supposed to be burned in 45. Orbital mirrors that could wipe out cities, and technologies that physics still calls impossible. Buckle up, we're about to dig where the truth is scarier than any myth. Hey there, you're on the CureTop channel. Dr. Zippermeyer's Vortex and Sonic Cannons. The official history claims that tanks and aviation decided the outcome of World War II. But if you look into the classified folders of Allied intelligence marked Combined Intelligence Objectives, Subcommittee, Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, a different picture emerges. In 1945, an American expert, combing the foothills of the Austrian Alps in the town of Lofer, stumbled upon a laboratory that looked more like a set from a movie about mad scientists of the future. Dr. Mario Zippermeyer worked here, a man who planned to win the war using the laws of aerodynamics and acoustics. His main creation was the Wilbey Cannoni. The Vortex cannon was not just a tube with gunpowder, it was a complex engineering device about 10 meters long. The operating principle was based on creating an artificial toroidal vortex, a powerful ring of compressed air capable of maintaining its shape and destructive force while moving. Oxygen and acetylene were mixed under enormous pressure in a special combustion chamber. After detonation, the shockwave passed through a calibrated nozzle, turning into an air fist. To make this vortex deadly for aviation, Zippermeyer suggested adding fine coal dust to the mixture. During tests in Lofer, this device in front of high-ranking SS officers turned thick wooden shields into splinters at a distance of 150 meters. According to the designer's idea, such cannons were supposed to defend German cities. The vortex, when entering the operating zone of a B-17 bomber's engine, was supposed to cause an instant pressure drop, literally tearing the plane's wings off or causing the fuel tanks to detonate. The project was delayed only because, at an altitude of 3,000 meters, the air density changed and the vortex lost its stability. However, in American intelligence documents, report number 216, it is stated that the destructive potential of this device deserves the closest attention from Pentagon specialists. But Zippermeyer was not the only master of the elements. In the same secret center, Dr. Richard Waloszek was developing the Schallkanon project, a sound cannon. It was a colossal parabolic antenna with a diameter of 3 meters and 20 centimeters. At its focus was a combustion chamber where methane and oxygen were supplied under pressure. The device produced up to 50 micro-explosions per second. The sound frequency was specially chosen to resonate with the internal organs of a person. According to the test protocols, the effect was terrifying. At a distance of up to 60 meters, the sound caused instant loss of consciousness, convulsions, and death due to resonant rupture of liver and kidney tissues. At a distance of 200 meters, enemy soldiers experienced uncontrollable panic attacks, dizziness, and auditory fatigue, making them completely incapable of fighting. Waloszek insisted on creating mobile units based on the Panther tank chassis to burn through enemy defenses with invisible sound. Why didn't this weapon appear on the front lines? Was it only because of bureaucracy and fuel shortages? At the end of 1944, after the war, Waloszek's and Zippermeyer's units were dismantled and taken to the United States as part of Operation Paperclip. For a long time, it was believed that these developments were a hoax, until they were declassified in the 1990s. Blueprints confirmed that the Nazis were one step away from turning the very atmosphere of the planet into a deadly weapon. But while some scientists of the Reich were trying to master the physics of air, others from the mystical society, Ahnenerbe, were searching for power in objects that never belonged to the Earth. In 1938, they went to the roof of the world, to Tibet, to bring back something made from a fallen star. The Tibetan Iron Man. While the physicists in the Luftwaffe were trying to tame sound, the ideologists from the Reich's most mysterious department, Ahnenerbe, were looking not into laboratories, but deep into the ages and into the abyss of space. Himmler was obsessed with the idea that the origins of the Aryan race were hidden on the roof of the world in Tibet. In 1938, a top-secret expedition led by SS Sturmbannführer Ernst Schaefer was sent there, officially to study the local flora and fauna. But the real goal was hidden in the instructions given to anthropologist Bruno Beger to find evidence of the existence of a superior race and the artifact of the legendary Shambhala. It was from this very expedition that an object was brought to Berlin, which today makes scientists shudder. It is a small statue, weighing about 10 kilograms of the Buddhist deity Vaishravana, which the SS men nicknamed the Iron Man. On the deity's belly was a left-facing swastika, which for Buddhists is a symbol of good luck. But for the Nazis, it was undeniable proof of ancient kinship. The statue disappeared right after the fall of Berlin and was considered a myth for decades, until it resurfaced in a private collection in 2012. The owner permitted an analysis, and the results shocked scientists. A group of researchers from the University of Stuttgart, led by Elmar Buchner, determined that the statue was carved not from stone and not from ordinary iron. It is a taxite, the rarest type of meteoritic iron with an abnormally high content of nickel and cobalt. Chemical analysis showed that the material of the statue is a fragment of the Chinj meteorite, which fell on the border of Siberia and Mongolia about 15,000 years ago. The Nazis, either unknowingly or, on the contrary, fully understanding, brought to Germany an artifact literally made from star iron. For Himmler, who believed in the doctrine of world ice, according to which life on Earth was brought from space in the form of ice blocks with metal inclusions, this find became the Holy Grail. But why did the SS need this meteorite idol? According to the interrogations of the Ahnenerbe staff, they believed that metals that came from space possessed a specific energy capable of enhancing psychic abilities and serving as a key to communicate with certain higher entities. The statue of the Iron Man was not just a souvenir, it was studied in secret laboratories as an energy accumulator. Where did the other artifacts disappear to? In Schaefer's archives, there are mentions of strange texts on bones that supposedly contained instructions for controlling the forces of nature. Today, the Iron Man is recognized as the only image of a human carved from a meteorite in the world. But was he the only celestial key that the Nazis took out of Tibet? Right before the war, artifacts from space were only part of the plan to achieve world domination. If meteorites gave mystical power, then German engineers planned to use the sun itself as a tool of absolute destruction. In 1943, deep within the rocket centers, a project was born that today would be called the Death Star of the Third Reich, the Third Reich's sun gun. If you thought that the concept of orbital weapons was an invention of the Star Wars era and Ronald Reagan, the archives from 1945 will make you think again. When American rocket experts entered the research center in Oberpfaffenhofen, they discovered a folder with calculations that at first was mistaken for pure science fiction. It was the Zonin Gigawatt Project, the solar cannon. The name belonged to the outstanding physicist Hermann Oberth, the man who was actually at the origins of world rocketry. In 1943, the Nazi leadership, realizing that the war could not be won by conventional means, gave their approval. They began work on the most ambitious project in human history, launching a giant mirror into orbit to burn entire megacities. Reich engineers calculated that at an altitude of 8,000 kilometers above the Earth, a concave mirror with an area of 3 square kilometers should be deployed. They planned to use pure sodium as the material, a lightweight metal with incredible reflective properties. The mirror was supposed to be not just a piece of metal, but a controllable spacecraft. The design included living quarters for the crew, sealed gardens for oxygen production, and solar panels. With the help of corrective rocket engines, the mirror would focus sunlight into a narrow beam several dozen meters in diameter. According to Oberth's calculations, the temperature at the focal point of the beam would reach several thousand degrees. That's enough to vaporize a reservoir in seconds, turn a major industrial center to ash, or literally boil the ocean in the area where an enemy fleet is moving. It was the perfect clean weapon. No radioactive contamination, just the scorching power of the sun, which was impossible to resist. Why wasn't the project implemented? According to the Germans' own estimates, building and launching such a machine would take at least 15 years and an enormous amount of resources. But the very fact that the Nazis seriously discussed the budget and technical stages of assembling the mirror in orbit shows that their science was far beyond the understanding of their contemporaries. After the war, American intelligence agencies confirmed the viability of this idea, but admitted that it was technically unattainable for the 1940s. However, the question remains open whether these blueprints became the basis for modern secret developments of laser weapons in space. The Reich's space ambitions were grandiose, but the real secrets were kept not only above our heads, but also deep beneath our feet. While some looked at the stars, others were building underground cities with technologies that official science still calls impossible. Underground city cement. In 1944, when Allied aviation was turning German cities into ruins, the leadership of the Third Reich decided to move critical technologies underground. This is how Project Quartz was born, better known by its codename Cement. The location was the Austrian city of Rothendorf. At first glance, it was supposed to be a factory for producing aviation bearings for the company Steyr Daimler Puch. But when Soviet and American intelligence groups entered these tunnels in May 1945, they realized that not only aircraft parts were being prepared here. The underground city cement is more than 10 kilometers of tunnels carved into solid rock. At depths of up to 50 meters, its construction required meters. More than 15,000 concentration camp prisoners were thrown into the work. But what is shocking is not the size, but what was discovered inside. In some halls, the ceiling height reached 15 meters, and the walls were covered with a complex shielding system. The reports of the Soviet Technical Commission mentioned strange objects that did not fit into the concept of an ordinary engineering plant. Among them were giant vacuum chambers and massive ceramic insulators designed to work with extremely high voltages. Why would a bearing manufacturing plant need vacuum installations of that size? There are theories, partially confirmed by declassified NNRB documents, that the cement facility was a cover for research in the field of high-frequency physics and plasma technologies. Some researchers believe that the Nazis were trying to create a device for isotope separation, or powerful emitters capable of remotely disabling the electronics of enemy bombers. The most terrifying thing happened after the war. Most of the equipment was dismantled and taken to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics as part of the trophy program. But the specifications of this equipment are still kept in classified archives. Moreover, part of the lower levels of the cement facility was deliberately blown up and flooded by the SS themselves before their retreat. For years, the local residents of Rothendorf spoke about strange noises coming from underground, and about columns of trucks that were not carrying machines into the tunnels, but strange lead containers. What were the Nazis hiding in the cement facility's flooded levels? Was it a primitive attempt to create an atomic bomb, or something more exotic related to harnessing vacuum energy? The answer still lies beneath millions of tons of concrete and water. But if the underground factories were a triumph of engineering, the ideology behind them bordered on madness. Nazi scientists believed that the outcome of the war depended not on the number of tanks, but on how closely they followed the ancient doctrine of world ice. Hitler's ice myth, while scientists around the world relied on quantum physics and theory, attracted them. The top leadership of the Third Reich officially proclaimed Aryan science, which today seems like absolute madness. This refers to the Welteislehre, or the world ice doctrine, created by the Austrian engineer Hans Herberger. This was not just a private opinion, it was a state cosmology supported by Hitler and Himmler. Herberger claimed that the foundation of the entire universe is ice. According to his theory, millions of years ago, a giant ice planet collided with a huge hot sun, which led to a series of explosions. But the most frightening thing about this theory was not the past, but the future. Herberger believed that the moon is a huge ball of ice that is gradually approaching the Earth. He said that throughout Earth's history, several moons have fallen to Earth, destroying civilizations like Atlantis, and that the Aryan race are the surviving gods with superhuman abilities, who will return when the ice prevails again. Hitler saw in this teaching an alternative to Einstein's Jewish physics. A whole meteorology department was created in the Ahnenerbe office, which was headed by Hans Bendorf, a follower of Gerberger. The Nazis' strong belief in a mystical link between ice and fate directly shaped World War II. In 1941, when German generals requested weather data to prepare for the winter campaign in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, The official Luftwaffe Meteorological Service warned about extreme frosts. But the ice prophets at Himmler's headquarters convinced the Führer otherwise. Relying on Gyorberger's doctrine, they predicted an abnormally mild winter, claiming that the icy elements would be favorable to true Aryans. As a result of this blind faith in pseudoscience, German trains were transporting summer uniforms to the front, and the lubricant in tanks and airplanes was not designed for temperatures below 5 degrees. When the legendary 40-degree frosts hit, the soldiers of the Reich found themselves face to face with the very elements they had considered their ally. Thousands suffered from frostbite, equipment failed, and the failure of Operation Typhoon became a direct result of mysticism prevailing over common sense. Interestingly, even after the disaster near Moscow, Hitler did not abandon the theory. The archives contain records that the Nazis continued to build meteorological stations in the Arctic, such as the Ladois Kotel on Franz Josef Land. But their task was not only to monitor the weather, but also to search for ancient ice, which supposedly contained the biological memory of the first superhumans. This fanatical belief in ice magic turned into one of the most fatal delusions in human history, proving that when ideology begins to dictate the laws of physics, civilization is doomed to collapse. The secret drug D9 and the zombie army. While the ideologists of the Reich dreamed of ice gods, the medics in the SS were solving a more down-to-earth but no less sinister task. How can you turn an ordinary person into a biological machine that knows no fatigue, pain, or fear? In 1944, in the laboratory of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, a drug codenamed D9 was developed under the supervision of Vice Admiral Helmut Hay. This was not just a stimulant, but a real super soldier elixir, the chemical formula of which was hidden in classified archives for decades. The composition of D9 was a deadly cocktail. One tablet contained 5 mg of oxycodone, a powerful synthetic painkiller, 5 mg of cocaine, and 3 mg of methamphetamine. To enhance the effect, synthetic vitamins and specific alkaloids were added. The Nazis planned to supply this drug to submarine crews, sabotage groups, and SS frontline units for multi-day forced marches without sleep or food. The drug was tested on concentration camp prisoners, and the results were shocking. Records have survived describing the endurance test. Prisoners who took D9 were forced to march in circles with 20-kilogram backpacks for 24 hours a day, while an ordinary trained soldier collapses from exhaustion. After 10-12 hours, the test subjects under the influence of D9 kept moving for a week. The record was 90 kilometers of continuous marching over rough terrain without a single stop. However, the price of such endurance was horrifying. The drugs caused irreversible changes in the psyche. The soldiers turned into something like living dead, carrying out orders with mechanical precision, not reacting to wounds, and completely losing their instinct for self-preservation. The test subjects exhibited a complete lack of empathy and hypertrophied aggression. Essentially, the Nazis were creating an army of zombies, capable of continuing to fight even with severed limbs or fatal wounds to the abdomen, since the pain threshold was completely erased by toxicodone. Fortunately for the Allies, mass production of D9 began too late. Only a few batches were produced which were tested in time. On the crews of the Seehund-class midget submarines, submariners who took the drugs could stay in the tiny, stuffy cabin for up to 4 days in a state of full combat readiness. After the war, D9 formulas and research results were acquired by American and Soviet intelligence agencies. It was precisely on the basis of these Nazi developments that modern combat psychostimulants for special forces were created during the Cold War. But the true scale of biological experiments on the new human in the Reich still remains a subject of debate among medical historians. The first space bomber in 1942, when conventional aviation was only beginning to master flights at medium altitudes. German engineer Eugen Singer and mathematician Irene Brett presented a project that was half a century ahead of its time. This was the Silbervogel, or Silverbird, a partially orbital bomber spaceplane designed to strike targets in the United States directly from space. The principle of the Silverbird's flight was unique. Instead of simply flying through the atmosphere, the craft was supposed to accelerate on a giant 3-kilometer rail track. With the help of a powerful rocket engine, after taking off to an altitude of about 280 kilometers, it would actually enter near space. But the most incredible part began during descent. Singer found that entering the atmosphere at a specific angle would let the craft bounce off dense layers instead of burning up, like a flat stone skipping off the surface of water. This effect is called gliding in the atmosphere. With these jumps, the bomber could cover huge distances, reaching New York or Chicago in just a few dozen minutes. It was assumed that the craft could carry up to 4 tons of bombs, and intercepting the Silverbird was technically impossible. No air defense system of that time could operate at such altitudes and speeds. The project was so ambitious that its implementation would have required colossal resources, which the Reich no longer had by 1944. However, Singer's calculations were so precise that after the war, they caused a real shock among the Allies. KGB archives contain evidence that Joseph Stalin, after studying the captured blueprints, ordered Soviet intelligence to organize the abduction of Eugene Singer from France so that he could finish building his bird. The operation was unsuccessful for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but Singer's ideas formed the basis of the Soviet Buran project and the American shuttles. Decades later, American military experts admitted that if the Nazis had finished building this device and combined it with nuclear weapons, the outcome of the war could have been unpredictable. The Silverbird project remained in history forever as the first blueprint of a real space weapon, making the concept of intercontinental strikes a reality even before the official start of the space race. The Hollow Earth Doctrine, the search for entrances to other worlds. Among all the strange theories supported by the leadership of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the most mysterious remains the Hollow Earth Doctrine. This was not just a mystical fascination of Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler, but an official state program that received huge budget funding. Nazi ideologists seriously believed that our planet is hollow inside, and that beneath the crust there is another life, high-tech civilizations, and even an inner sun. In 1942, by personal order of Hermann Göring, one of the strangest military operations was organized. A group of scientists led by physicist Heinz Fischer went to the island of Rügen in the Baltic Sea. Their task was to aim a powerful radar on the installation not toward the horizon, but into the sky at a 45-degree angle. They thought that if Earth were concave, radar beams reflecting off the atmosphere could detect the British fleet through the planet's center. The experiment failed, but the very attempt to conduct it shows how deeply mysticism had penetrated military strategy. Special attention was given to searching for entrances to this underground space. Expeditions looked for them in Tibet, the Himalayas, and the far north, but the most famous location became Antarctica. In 1938, Captain Alfred Richer's expedition on the ship Schwabenland declared a vast area of the ice continent as German territory under the name New Swabia. Officially, this was done to protect the whaling industry, but in secret SS reports there were mentions of searching for warm oases and geothermal caves that could lead deep into the planet. After the war, there were rumors among American submariners that German Type 21 submarines were heading to Antarctica, loaded with secret archives and rare materials. There is a theory that the Nazis discovered giant underground cavities there, created by warm currents, and tried to establish a secret base 211. Admiral Karl Dionys once made a mysterious statement. The German submarine fleet is proud to have created for the Führer an impregnable fortress on the other side of the world, a true earthly paradise. Was this figure just a speech, or did the Nazis actually find something anomalous under the Antarctic ice? Official science denies the possibility of cavities of such scale existing. But numerous reports about Ahnenerbe operations around the world make historians return to this question again and again. What were the SS men searching for in the most remote places, and did they find it? The vacuum bomb and the nightmare of Ohrdruf. While the project to create a classic atomic bomb in Germany was stalled due to a shortage of uranium and heavy water. A group of scientists led by the already familiar Dr. Mario Ziepermeyer was working on what we now call thermobaric weapons, but in 1944 it was called the coal bomb, or the Hollenstaub project. The idea was frighteningly effective. Instead of relying on radioactive decay, the Nazis decided to use the energy of colossal pressure and the burning of atmospheric oxygen. The technical essence of the experiment was as follows. A special charge released a huge cloud of fine coal dust into the air, mixed with liquid oxygen. A fraction of a second later, a second detonation occurred which ignited this mixture. The result was a volumetric explosion of incredible power that created a zone of complete vacuum. The most classified episode took place on March 4, 1945, at the Ohrdruf testing ground in Thuringia. According to the testimony of a witness, discovered in the main intelligence directorate archives and declassified only in the 1990s. In particular, reports from Soviet military intelligence state that the Nazis conducted a device that caused an effect comparable to a tactical nuclear charge. Residents of nearby villages described a blinding flash, the light of which could be seen for dozens of kilometers, and a powerful rumble that shattered windows in houses. The Soviet intelligence reports mention the results of the inspection of the epicenter. In an area of several hundred square meters, all vegetation was turned to ash. But the most terrifying thing was the impact on biological objects. Hundreds of prisoners from the nearest camp were used as test subjects at the testing site. Researchers found bodies that did not have a single shrapnel wound or burn, but their lungs were literally turned inside out, and their eardrums had burst. This is a typical effect of a vacuum bomb. A sudden pressure drop sucks the air out of the body, causing instant and agonizing death. There is a theory that not only chemistry was behind this project, but also the occult research of the SS Black Sun Society. They believed that releasing the energy of the void was the way to control matter itself. Hans Kammler, who oversaw all the Reich's secret constructions in Ohrdruf, was the project's curator. It was Kammler who, in the last days of the war, ordered all traces of the test to be destroyed and the technical staff to be executed. Why didn't the Nazis use this weapon at the front? The documents point to a logistical dead end. For the mass use of vacuum bombs, colossal amounts of liquid oxygen were required, which the German industry, devastated by bombings, could no longer produce. After the war, American and Soviet specialists painstakingly gathered data from Ohrdruf. Today, modern vacuum bombs, such as the Russian father of all bombs, are direct descendants of those very experiments by Cypermeyer. But the secret of how close the Nazis came to creating a true doomsday weapon in the forests of Thuringia still remains classified in the archives of several countries. The technological morgue of Lake Toplitz. At the end of April 1945, when it became clear that collapse was inevitable, SS officers began implementing a plan to hide the most dangerous developments. The center of these events was the high mountain Lake Toplitzy in the Austrian Alps, which the locals still call the Killer Lake. This place was not chosen by chance. The lake reaches a depth of 100 meters, and at about 20 meters deep, there is a layer of water with zero oxygen content, which makes it an ideal natural preservative for metal and paper. From 1943 to 1945, a secret Navy testing station operated on the shores of Lake Toplitzy. Here, under strict secrecy, prototypes of rocket weapons were tested. It was designed to be launched from submarines. This was the Prüfstand 12 project, the predecessor of modern submarine-launched ballistic missiles. The most interesting part started in the war's final weeks. Witnesses described columns of trucks with SS emblems that, under the cover of night, dumped heavy hermetically sealed crates wrapped in chains into the lake. In 1959, an expedition from the German magazine Stern recovered crates of counterfeit British pounds from the bottom. Operation Bernhardt. But that was just a cover. The secrets were hidden deeper. Divers who tried to explore the bottom in the 1960s to 1980s often died under strange circumstances. One of the most famous cases is the death of the French explorer Jean-Pierre Dequesne, who allegedly found the entrance to a submerged tunnel at the bottom, but died before he could pass on the coordinates. According to captured documents, prototypes of hydroacoustic mini-traps and documentation for a project to create biological weapons based on deep-water microorganisms were dumped into the lake. But the main secret of the lake is considered to be the so-called iron safe of the head of the main directorate of Imperial Security, Ernst Kaltenbrunner. It is believed that not only agent notes were kept there, but also descriptions of technologies obtained during the Ahnenerbe experiments in Tibet. The lake has still not been fully explored due to the accumulation of sunken trees and mini-traps left by the SS men. It remains the technological morgue of the Reich, keeping secrets that are still considered too dangerous for humanity. The Mucha facility and Project Kronos conclude our review with the most mysterious site, which is officially listed in Polish archives under the codename Mucha. We're talking about a strange concrete structure in the Ludwigsdorf area, known as Hench. It's a massive 12-sided concrete ring, about 30 meters in diameter, mounted on sturdy supports. The official version claims that this is just a foundation for a cooling tower, but engineers unanimously state that such a structure is excessive and absurd for a regular cooling system. It was here, in the depths of the secret race complex, that Velika Amerikan worked on Project Kronos. At the center of the fly was a device referred to in documents as the Bell, but its true purpose was related to manipulating ultra-high energies. The project was led by SS General Jakob Sporenberg during interrogations after the war. He testified about the unusual glow that came from the device during operation, and that the test area was surrounded by 5 rings of security. The technological essence of Project Kronos lies in the study of so-called torsion fields and the attempt to create anti-gravitational ones. Inside the device, 2 heavy lead cylinders rotated in opposite directions, filled with a substance called Zerum 525, a violet liquid resembling mercury, but with an anomalous density. During the test, strange physical phenomena were observed around the device. Plants within a 200-meter radius turned into a shapeless mass in a matter of seconds, and the personnel began to experience hallucinations and coordination disorders. The most frightening part of the story of the device called the Fly is its ending. In April 1945, by order from Berlin, all 62 scientists who worked on Kronos were executed and buried in unmarked graves. To ensure the secret never left the facility, the device itself and all documentary traces of Zerum 525 disappeared without a trace. Only the concrete ring of the Fly remains, which still emits an anomalous electromagnetic field. Some investigators believe that the Nazis were close to creating a technology capable of warping space-time itself, and that's exactly why all traces of this project were destroyed with such ruthless cruelty. This was only a small part of what the Nazis tried to hide from the world. Do you believe that their developments are still secretly being used, or was it a grand hoax? Write your version in the comments and subscribe to our channel to know the truth. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.